Not long ago, we were stuck, grinding jobs we hated. But there's so much more to life than that.
We decided to do everything that everyone told us could not be done. Now we're flipping houses, we own multiple companies, and we're here to prove that you never have to settle for mediocrity.
I tour with my band, we run our companies together, and we've manifested a life beyond our wildest dreams. All by having the courage to take the leap and ignore the naysayers.
We declared mutiny on the life we were handed. Now we are here to share how we did it with you.
Tune in for inspiring stories, manifestation techniques, and real advice. We'll show you the steps to flip your mindset, your money, and your life.
Welcome to the Mutiny Model.
Ready to join the rebellion? Let's chart your course. Welcome to the Mutiny Model, empowering your strategic rebellion. My name is Stephanie. I'm here with my husband, Patrick. And we have guests on each and every week who have rebelled, who have gone against the grain, who have escaped the matrix, who have created a life of freedom on their own terms so that we can inspire you guys to do the same. Patrick, do you want to give a little intro of who we have here with us this week?
Oh, yeah. So today we have the pleasure of having who I call my brother. He's a champion. You see the belts in the background. Yann Oliveira. He is the CEO, the owner of Pro Warrior Construction. We got Pro Warrior Painting, Pro Warrior Dumpsters. I mean, the list goes on.
Spray foam, HVAC.
Pro Warrior spray foam,
propane.
HVAC.
Propane.
Which I do have a question about the names, why he named his company that. However, he's also, as you can see, an MMA champion. So we're going to talk about all that, but we are so happy to have him on, and he is our very first guest on the show. So so welcome, brother. Welcome.
I appreciate you guys.
Yes, sir.
Thank
yes,
you.
sir.
My pleasure.
All right.
Hey, welcome, Yann. Welcome.
Thank you so
How you
much.
doing today?
I'm doing great. How about you
Good.
guys? How you doing?
Good.
We're awesome.
It's
Good to
amazing
have you,
energy
brother.
here in the studio. So
Absolutely. Happy to be here. You guys bring such amazing energy. It's like,
thank
you
you.
know, every time I see you guys, it always feels like a party, no matter where we are.
Yeah.
I love this.
Love running into you, brother.
The barbershop,
Likewise.
right? Wherever you
right.
guys
I
are.
Oh yeah,
see
I
them.
get spoiled by seeing Patrick every Thursday. You know, I got my haircut every Thursday at 10 a.m.
Yeah.
Patrick is right after me,
Yeah.
so we get to see each other. He's coming in, I'm going out. It's
out
a
to
party
Eddie,
every
right?
It's a
time.
party. I
Yeah.
mean, we give each other hugs. You feel the energy when I hug
Yeah.
my
Oh
brother.
yeah. I always have a better day after hugging this man.
And likewise.
You know? I love it.
This is the energy he has, y'all. This is the energy. Yann Oliveira. So Stephanie, let's get started with the questions.
So Yann, you know, you like we mentioned, you're the epitome of the Mutiny Model, right? It's like, you know, we're looking for people who built their own path, built their own way. So can you just kind of start us from the beginning and tell us a little bit about your upbringing, where you came from, and then we'll get into a little bit about your entrepreneurship side, because clearly you are a serial entrepreneur, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, my story, you know, it started from a very humble upbringing, very simple. You know, I grew up in a small little farm town in Brazil. You know,
Okay.
I grew up in a farm. My first best friend, I think it was a cow, you know? So it's like,
That's kind of beautiful.
it is, you know,
It
and
is.
I wouldn't trade it for the world, you know?
Yeah.
So it's, you know, very, you know, simple family, simple upbringing. You know, we were never necessarily rich or had everything.
Yep, you had what you
know,
needed and-
we had what we needed. We had food on the table. We had shoes on our feet and clothes on our back. And I feel like that's, you know, plenty to ask for.
Yeah.
But, you know, I love the way I was raised. I was raised to work hard. I was raised to find value in the things that you do and not just put your own value on material things, you know. And you know, I grew up with my grandfather, and my grandmothers who pretty much raised me. Yeah. You know, my father, he moved to America when I was born. So
that's hard, yeah.
in 1988, December 13th, that's when I was born, and that same day was when my father landed in the United States.
Wow.
You know, so he left Brazil to come to America looking for a better life.
Yep.
And my mother, when she had me, she was still going to school. She was 17 years old. She was still going to school. And my grandparents pretty much brought her in and said, hey, you know, I know his dad is in America now, but we're gonna help you. We're gonna help you raise him. You know, we're gonna do the best we can. You know, to give him the best life possible. You know, and so I learned to have a good work ethic from the very beginning from my grandfather. My grandfather, he's my hero.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and
Awesome.
when I think of heroes, when I think of a superhero, I think of my grandfather. You know, I watched that man do everything in his power to give me the best life possible. And not only that, but he had 11 kids.
Oh man.
He had 11 kids, him and my grandmother, and he put all 11 through college.
Wow.
Every single one of them went through college.
Everyone.
Everyone.
Wow.
Every
That's
single
a
one of them
huge-
graduated. Some went to college twice, you know.
Oh, yeah.
And
He's
you
like,
know,
again?
pretty much, you know.
Wow.
And so I learned very young to work hard and put the time in and appreciate the things we have. And even though there were times where we didn't have much, but it was everything I needed.
Yeah.
So that was good enough.
Yeah.
Oh,
you know?
man.
So that's pretty much, you know, my upbringing in Brazil, you know, working on the farm and, you know, helping out with things. My first passion for sports really was soccer, you know.
Yeah.
Yep.
Immediately I started playing soccer and I played very competitive. I played under a professional team in Brazil when I was in Brazil for
Yeah.
U12 Academy.
Very cool.
Yeah, you know, all the way up to when I moved to America from Brazil at 14 years old.
Okay. And what,
Yeah.
what prompted your move here?
So the biggest part of my move here was I wanted to meet my father. I had never met my dad,
Okay.
you know, so it was one of those things that, you know, and I still remember how everybody used to talk about my dad. You know, he was like Superman, you know, he was the coolest dude. Everybody talked about how cool he was, how funny he was. Everybody loved him. You know, he was the life of the party.
Charismatic.
Yeah.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
know, somewhat like Patrick.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Lights
And,
up the room type of person.
lights up the
Yeah.
room, you know what I mean?
I'm trying to tone it down in my old age. You know what I'm saying?
Don't
Take
tone it down,
easy.
please. Don't tone it down. Keep being you, man. I
got you.
don't
dull
know
your
that I can
shine.
love
Don't dull
you
the
any
shine.
different.
No.
I want you
I-
just like that.
Say less,
You
champ.
know?
I got you, champ. I got you.
You know,
Yeah.
so you know, it was my first dream in life was to meet my dad, right? And from a very young age, I noticed and I realized very quickly when I would see my friends with their dad and their dad picking them up from soccer practices, dropping them off at soccer practices, I didn't have that, and I noticed that.
That's
you
tough.
know,
Yeah.
but I could never complain because I had my grandfather.
Yeah.
Who was
A
more
father
than
figure.
a dad.
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
A figure. Yep.
He was everything to me, and
Yeah.
he never made me feel like I was any different from any other kid.
Right.
Because I didn't have my biological father there.
Yep.
It didn't mean I didn't have a dad.
Yeah.
You know.
Sure.
Right.
And so my grandfather never let me feel it, but I was smart enough to understand that I didn't have my biological dad like everybody did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, so we fought for a very long time for me to come to this country, right? And to be quite honest with you, for a long time, we were trying to get a visa so I could come here, but we got denied a few times, and it got to a point where, you know, some family members were like, you know what? Let's just send them through Mexico. Let's just send them illegally,
Wow.
you know?
Wow.
And I remember this, you know, my mother and my father, you know, they would say all the time, like, no way we're going to do that. We're
Yeah.
not going to send this kid to another country illegally
Yeah.
and set him up for failure.
Sounds so
Right.
You know,
dangerous too.
but-
Even the thought of the journey,
Oh,
right?
you know, you
Yeah.
just never know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
You know, and a lot
Yeah.
of people die in that
Yeah.
journey, you know. People
Yeah.
get-
Yeah, it's not
you know,
worth it.
People get raped, and,
Yeah.
you know, and
Yeah.
things like that happen.
Yes.
You know, it's a true thing. It's not what you're seeing on TV.
Yeah.
It's not a movie. It's real life.
Yeah.
You know.
Nope.
And their thing is their thing was we don't want to send them like that and already put them in another country in a disadvantage.
Yeah.
What happens if
Yeah.
he gets caught,
You need
by
ID, you need-
immigration,
yeah.
then they send them
Yeah.
back, and
Yeah.
you got to start the process all over again. So my family was very firm on, if we're gonna go to another country, we're gonna do it the right way,
Yeah.
you know.
Yep.
And man,
And they kept at it, clearly.
they
right?
kept
They
at
didn't
it.
give up.
My father became a U.S. citizen,
Okay.
Awesome.
and ultimately, I became a U.S. citizen through my father.
Okay.
But you know, I love telling the story because this is one of my favorite moments of my life, right?
Yeah.
So on the day of my birthday, I was turning 14 years old.
Okay.
That's when I had my appointment at the immigration in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil.
Okay.
At the U.S. Embassy for the immigration, so I could get my paperwork and all that.
Okay.
And I'll never forget this. We went in there a few days prior, and they were just like, "Hey, you're missing this paperwork. You're missing that paperwork. See if you can get it here by this date."
So stressful.
Yeah, so stressful.
Yeah.
You know, and they wanted something specific by like a few days later, you know, like 3 or 4 days later, right? I never forget this. The second we left, my father immediately called my dad and was like, "Hey, we need this, that, and the other, and if we don't get it by then for his interview, he's going to get denied," right? And my father said, "No problem, I'm gonna get on that." They got on it immediately, my father and my stepmother, because at that time my father was already remarried here in the States.
Okay.
And had 2 kids, my brother Keegan and my sister Amelia, and they immediately got on it, right? And they paid whatever it was to get it here immediately.
Like overnight. Wow.
Pretty much. You know, I don't think overnight at that time was one of those things that actually like existed, was really overnighted. You know, it actually took a couple of days, but you could pay extra to get it there faster than the usual.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget this. You know, a couple of days go by, we didn't have it. I think 3 days went by, we didn't have it. And then came the 4th day when we were supposed to go to the appointment the very next day. And the paperwork got delivered to my aunt's house where I was staying at in Rio de Janeiro, right?
Wow.
And we were like, "Oh my God, we got this out of the way.
The last minute.
Let's hope that this is what it takes for us to get this." And it just so happened that the day of my appointment was on my birthday when I was turning 14 years old.
Yeah.
So we went in there, then they sent us to a room upstairs, and there's this room where a bunch of people are just sitting there praying and hoping that they get a visa, that they can come to America, they can come visit or whatever, or come live. And I'll never forget this. They called my name. My mother was with me. We go into the room, and my mom, she had me young. She had me at 17 years old. You know, in that interview, she was in her 30s, right? So we go in a room. American guy, absolutely flirting up a storm with my mom. You know, she was a really beautiful woman. She always looked very young. She was very good looking.
I mean, look at you. You're a beautiful man. I'm sure your
Thank
mom
you,
had to do something with that.
You know, I had to get something from her. You know?
Good.
So, man, it was hilarious. This guy's hitting on my mom, and I'm just kind of looking at him. I was just like, "Go ahead, you hit on her, but you let me go to America.
Yeah, right.
Otherwise, I'm throwing something at your face, you know?" I'm thinking in my head, I was like, "I'm not sitting here putting up with you hitting on my mother for no reason, you know?" And he's going through the paperwork, looking at all these things and checking things off, and then he looks at me and he said, "Oh wow, today is your birthday, huh?" And I'm like, "Yeah, today is my birthday." He was like, "How old?" I said, 14. And he was like, "Oh, that's awesome." He was like, "What would you like for your birthday? What would be the best gift that you could get for your birthday?" And I looked at him, I said, "To meet my father." And he stopped and he was like, "Wait, what do you mean to meet your father?" I said, "Well, my father lives in America, and I've always wanted to meet him, you know, and I was like, that's my dream, to meet him. That'd be the best gift I could get."
Yeah.
And this guy, like, he stopped and he was like just staring at me like he couldn't believe what I was saying.
Yeah.
You know?
He couldn't imagine being in that situation, probably. Right?
You know, because it's not normal. It's not a normal situation.
Because he may have had kids and
and I could see that he got, you know, a little emotional, you know, looking at him in the eyes, and he stopped flipping through the papers. Like when I said that, he stopped. He grabbed my passport and then he grabbed the stamp.
Yeah.
And then he opened it and he looked at me and he said, "Happy birthday. You're going to go meet your dad."
Oh,
wow. My God, that just gave me chills.
I got chills
That
too.
gave me chills. Oh,
just
man.
like that.
Wow, that's beautiful.
Just like that.
Oh,
I did not know
You
that story.
The second he did that, I started bawling my eyes
I'm
out.
sure. What a relief.
That was,
Wow.
think about it, right?
Wow.
I'm being told about the Superman, and Superman is my dad.
Yeah.
And I never
And
met
there's a
Superman.
gate between you.
You know, and there's a gate between us, and this guy just opened it and said, "You're going."
Wow.
You know?
That's incredible.
He just made my dream come true, and he gave me the best birthday gift ever.
Ever.
I couldn't believe it. I started crying. My mother started crying.
And she was probably bittersweet because now you're leaving, right? But at least she's happy for you, you know.
She was happy for me that I was making my dream come true.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot.
And also she knew that I would have, you know, because in other countries, you guys might not be aware, but in other countries, we call United States the country of opportunity.
Yep.
Oh, of course.
That's what we call, you know.
I've heard that.
So we knew that I would have so many opportunities here that I wouldn't have living in a third world country like I was living in.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So
and did you make the best of it, Yann?
Oh my God. You know, it's
so you were given that and you were like, I am not gonna ever take this for granted, right? And that shows through what you've built. Yeah. I think, right?
Yeah. No, I never took it for granted. Listen,
and so
I don't take for granted taking a warm shower.
Yeah. You just being in that gratitude for everything. Yeah. And that we find that when you do have that gratitude, it magnetizes more in, you know. It does. There's so many people that you come across that have great lives and they do not appreciate them. They just want more. They just want, the next thing. They're not happy with
nothing's ever enough.
Blaming other people, victim mindset.
Yeah.
That's not going to get you anywhere.
No.
That's not going to get you anywhere, right?
No.
So then bring us a little further. You went to high school here and then after you graduated, what was your path? Did you work a few jobs before becoming an entrepreneur?
I did. I've always been involved in construction one way or another.
Okay.
I've always loved construction.
Yeah.
I loved working with my hands. I loved to learn different things. Building was to me the coolest thing. I take all different kinds of materials, I put them together, and now you have a house.
Make something beautiful.
It's like to me that was cool.
Yeah.
And also, my grandfather owned a business in Brazil. Him and my uncle, and they sold materials to build. They built half the town. Wow. We lived in, so they sold materials.
So you even had that from a young age.
So I always had that. I grew up watching that as well. And a lot of people in my family are entrepreneurs, so I saw that, and but I've always worked in construction one way or another. After leaving high school, I worked many different jobs. You know, at one point I worked as a mechanic. At one point I worked at the Burroughs Functional Hall in Bradford next to Citadel.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
That was actually my first job ever.
Okay.
That was my first job ever.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, and I will say I got fired because I had a cake fight in the kitchen with one of the employees. Me and another employee one time that this kid just he threw a piece of cake at me, joking, right? We were playing around. He threw a piece of cake at me, and
you're like, I'm not gonna let that slide. Yeah.
Immediately I retaliated, and it just so happened that when I retaliated, the big boss was walking in the kitchen, so he just saw my arm go boom and smacked this kid right in the face with a massive piece of cake. And
damn,
he's looking at me. He was like, "What the hell's the matter with you?" He's like, "Dude, no, you're done." And I looked at him. I was like, "Well, hey," I was like, "Look at all the cake on me." He threw it at me first.
Yeah.
And one of the line cooks, he was just like, Danny, there was this kid Danny that worked. I was like, Danny started. He threw it at him, and he threw it back. And he was like, "All right, both of you are fired."
Oh man, so you're both gone.
At least it was fair.
Right? We're both
At least it was fair.
But that was my first job. So I've done many different types of job. I've worked at a pizza shop. I've been a delivery man. I've washed the dishes. You name it, man. I've done roofing. I've done plaster, insulation. I've done all kinds of work. But ultimately, I've always loved doing construction.
Yeah.
But there was a period where, so when my first daughter was about to be born, I took a job with Comcast Xfinity.
Yeah.
Okay.
And to be honest with you, I knew a couple guys that worked for Comcast who had a really good life. They made pretty good money.
Yeah.
Okay.
They
Benefits,
enjoyed their
all
life,
that stuff.
benefits and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And I was at a crossroad in my life, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm about to be a dad. I don't have benefits.
Yeah.
I have nothing to offer my family, though I am making pretty good money where I'm at, but there's no real benefits,
Right.
So I applied for a job at Comcast, and the office that I applied in was Westford, and they hadn't hired anybody new in Westford. I think it was like 15 years since they hadn't hired somebody new, a technician from the street with no experience. And there was like 60-something applicants, but they only hired 2 guys. And I was one of them. I was one of the guys they hired. I felt so lucky and blessed. I felt so blessed. I couldn't even tell you. That was the answer to my prayers at the time, because I was mostly concerned with having the benefits for my family. I'm about to have a daughter. I want to make sure she has those benefits. She has health care and all that good stuff. That was very important to me. And though I wasn't making any money at all, I didn't realize that those guys, they had a good life and they were making good money because they had already been in the company for 20 plus years.
Right. You got raises and whatnot.
So I started at a very low rate. And this is where we get to the story how I became an entrepreneur.
Okay.
It was I will say it was one of the lowest points of my life. I could not make it do. I was
week to week, just
paycheck to paycheck.
Not even that. There were times where I was overdrafting my account the max I could, and when I got paid, it was enough to pay off what I had. Overdrafted.
The negatives just
just kept going. I was getting paid and it was just bringing me back to zero. That's all. But I was in Comcast. They're very strict with overtime, right? And you have to be in a company for X amount of time, and you have to be at a certain tier of a technician before you can start doing that. Your points have to be at a certain rate. So. Man, I was struggling, and I remember this one day. This is the day that actually really started changing things for me. Is there was one time, right?
About how old were you at this time?
At this time, I was 20. I think I was 28 years old.
I was
27, 20s. 28.
Okay.
There was one day where my daughter's mother. I was home on my day off with my daughter, and she was like, "Hey, can you do me a favor? Can you stop at the store and buy a bag of diapers?" And at that point, I was down to my last $25, right? And I said, okay. So we went to Walmart. That's where we used to buy diapers. I went to Walmart in Plastow to buy the diapers, and then I'd walk around with her in there, and she'd look at toys and stuff like that, and we would sit down in the aisle and play. She'd grab a couple of toys, we'd play in the aisle, then we'd put it back and go home, And I remember this one day, so I grabbed the bag of diapers. I had just enough to buy the diapers. And we go into the aisle. My daughter sees this doll, and I had never seen her light up like that. She grabbed the doll. She's playing with it. She hugged it, and she did this thing with the doll on her chest, And so I sat down on the floor with her, and we were playing together. And then when it was time to go, I was like, let's go put the doll back. So let's go home. And she held on to it, and she said, "Dada, I want it." And and I
Your
looked
heart,
at her.
Man, my heart is too much for my heart, because I got a girl, so I know what you mean.
Yeah.
I mean, every word's hitting right now.
It was one of those things where I looked at her and I said, we can't buy it. We can't buy that doll today. And I couldn't. I couldn't overdraft my account anymore at that point. The fees, that's all I had. And every time I made a purchase and overdrafted my account, it was $35 fee.
Oh yeah, I remember those days. We've all been there, Yann. I've been there. I know exactly what you mean, brother.
I knew I couldn't, so I had to look at her and tell her we couldn't buy that doll.
Ooh. That had to be one of the hardest things of your life.
That broke me. That absolutely broke me, because she started crying. I started crying. And I walked out of Walmart crying.
Oh my God.
And I'm driving home, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, how did I fail this hard? How did I put a child into this world and I can't buy her a doll? I don't remember. I think the doll might have been like $20,
Right.
I don't have an extra $20 to buy my daughter a doll. How did I do this? How did I put myself in this situation? And man, I cried so much, and I felt like a loser. I felt like I wasn't worth anything. I felt like I wasn't worthy of being this little girl's dad. She deserved much better than that. And I got into such a low point that I felt like I was worth more if I was dead. You know, I'm like, man, if I wasn't here today, somebody else would take care of her better than I could.
Wow.
You know,
Wow.
and I felt it was my lowest low ever, and I never brought that up to her mom. I never told her mom because I always believed that as a man, I couldn't talk about my fears. I couldn't talk about my problems.
You had to hold them
I
in.
couldn't put my worries on her. You know, I had to
yeah.
feel like, listen, you got a man here, and I'm gonna take care of you.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
as much as I struggled, I never let her feel it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I'm a man. I got a
Yeah.
family.
Yeah.
It's not your problem to worry about this things. It's my problem, and I got to make it happen. You know?
Yeah.
And I went to bed absolutely depressed that night, thinking of what's the easiest way to just end my life because I felt like I wasn't worth anything. You know?
Man, dude.
And then the very next day, I'll never forget this. The very next day, I went to work and I didn't have money to buy lunch. And I was at this customer's house and I set up new services. I set up new cable boxes
Yeah.
and all kinds of stuff. And we had a process we had to take to teach them how to use the remote.
Oh yeah, I remember that. I remember that about Comcast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And teach me, yeah, they
It
taught
was
you how
the
to
new-
use
You've had the
all
training,
features.
right?
You
Yeah.
remember the new
I remember
Xfinity remote that you talk to it?
Yes.
Yeah.
When it came out?
Yep.
Yeah.
So that was that time. So I was teaching her how to work, and my stomach just started growling like a lion.
Because you were hungry.
Bro, it was so loud, I think the neighbor heard it. You know what I mean? Like, I was starving,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And this was about, 1, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and I worked till 6. I did 14-hour shifts,
Yeah.
you know?
Crazy.
So this lady looked at me. She was like, "Oh, you hungry?" And I was just like, I haven't had the chance to stop by for lunch yet, so
Yeah.
I just haven't ate yet. She was like, "Oh, let me fix you up a sandwich."
Wow.
And
Wow.
and I looked. I was like, "No, you don't got to do that." I said, "When I leave here, I'll get some food. I'll have some time to grab food, and I'll eat it on my way to my next appointment." And she was like, "You sure?" I said, "Yeah, no, I'm sure. Don't worry about it." She was like, "Okay." So I finished setting up her remote. I said, "All right, you're all set. I'm gonna go downstairs to your basement. I'm gonna clean up all the wiring." I was very meticulous with the way I ran
Yeah.
wires, so I
Yeah.
wanted everything to look good and perfect.
Yeah.
Got everything done. I was down there for about 10 minutes or so. I come back upstairs. I'm about to leave, and she stops me and she gives me this bag, and she was like, "I made you a couple sandwiches."
Oh.
And she was like, "There's all kinds of snacks in there." And she was like,
Wow.
"And there's a little something in there for you too. You were great. I really appreciate you. Thank
Wow.
you so much. You did so good at teaching me how to use this remote. I'm not good with technology." She was super thankful, right? I was like, "Oh, you didn't have to do that." And she was like, "Oh, come on." She was like, "I'm a grandmother. You think I'm gonna let you leave my house hungry?"
Wow, she knew.
She was like,
Yeah.
"In case you
Intuition.
don't." It really was, and she was like, "Just in case you don't have time to grab lunch, you have something. You have some snacks in there."
Yeah.
Said thank you to her, and left. Right? Man, was I starving! I don't think I even turned my van on before I opened the bag. You know what I mean?
It's gone.
Dude, I immediately, before I even turned my van on, I got in it, shut the door, put my seatbelt on. I opened the bag to see what's in there, and there's like $150 in there,
No way.
There's money in there.
A big tip.
and just all kinds of food. I'm looking at this, and I'm like,
She knew.
No
Yeah,
way.
She knew.
I'm like, what the hell?
Yeah,
Dude,
and
this is
you
like-
have guardian angels too.
That's what I'm gonna say. This is like very
right?
angelic. This
Not
is like,
only that,
I really
but like
do.
you really do.
I do. I have.
These
I
stories
believe
are
in
pretty
God. I have
incredible.
God. I feel like God
do
has
too.
always looked out for me.
Yeah.
And man, I drove away from her house, and I still remember this. She lived in a little dead end street in Chelmsford,
Yeah. Okay.
Chelmsford, Mass.
Yeah.
I drove down the street. I started grabbing a sandwich. I started eating, and I couldn't stop crying. I couldn't contain myself. I was crying so much.
You needed that
I
lift.
couldn't contain
Yeah.
it, right?
Yeah.
And I called my boss, my manager at the time, and he was like, "Hey, what's going on?" I said, "Hey, can I please talk to you? I really need to talk to you." And he could hear my voice, and I was crying. He goes, "Hey, is everything okay?" I said, "No, I'm not okay. I'm not okay. I really need to talk to you." And he said, "Don't worry about it. I am blocking off the rest of your day. I'm pushing your jobs out. Come to the office right now." He was like, I was about to walk out.
Good.
By the time I left the house, it might have been, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, something like that. Because I was about to walk out, but I'm going to wait for you to get here. Don't worry about anything you have in your schedule for the rest of the day. Drive here now. So I drove over there. I was completely red. I was still crying. I was so emotional. I was so upset as to where I was in life.
Yeah.
And I never forget this. As I got to his cubicle, he looked at me and he was like, "Oh, let's go to the office."
Oh,
'Cause
he knew.
saw how I
Yeah.
was,
Yeah.
and I went in the office and I looked at him. I said, "Mike, I can't afford to work here." I said, "I know I'm not due for a raise. I understand this.
Yep. Yeah.
You know, so I'm not asking you to give me a raise." I was like, "But I'm here to beg you to let me work overtime." I was like, "I'm struggling. I barely have any money." I said, "I'm just going to be honest with you because I don't want to lie. I know we're not supposed to take tips from a customer, but this customer gave me a bag of food because I don't have money to buy food." I didn't tell her that,
Yeah.
but it's like
Yeah.
she knew.
Yeah,
She
yeah.
made me
Yeah.
a bag of food, and
Yeah.
when I opened the bag, there was $150 in there. You know, I didn't know that. I was
Yeah.
like, "But I am telling you because I want you to know the truth.
Yeah.
I'm not lying to you."
Yeah.
Right.
I said, "You see this money I have here? This is all I have. And this doesn't even cover how much my account is overdrafted until I get paid again."
Yeah.
I said, "Mike, I can't live. I need money." And he looked at me and he said, "How much money do you need?" I said, "I'm not asking for money. I want to work." He goes, No. How much money do you need?" He goes, "Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to let you borrow some money with no time frame to pay me back. If you want to pay me back, you pay me back. If you don't want to pay me back, you don't pay me back. And whatever time you need to pay me back, if you choose to pay me back, you pay me back. I'm never going to ask you for it. You pay me on your own terms."
Wow.
And I looked at him, I said, "I'm not taking your money. I'm not here to ask you for money. I'm here to ask
I
you
want
for
to work.
work.
Yeah.
I'm here
Yeah.
to beg you for work. I need to work, Mike. Let me do overtime. I don't know what it takes. Let me do overtime." And this is just another point of my life where God is real.
Yeah.
God is real.
Yeah.
Because he said, "Well, let's see if you're eligible for overtime." He goes, "I know you're pretty close. You're
Yeah.
pretty close at this point. You know, let's see if you're eligible."
Yeah.
And I said, "Okay, let's do it. I just want to work, Mike." And he goes, "But I'll give you some money. How about this? I'm not lending you money. I'm going to give you money." I said, "I won't take it
Yeah.
because I'm not here to beg for money.
Yeah.
I won't take it. I just want you to let me work."
Yeah.
He goes, "Fine." So we go into his computer, into his cubicle. He puts my name in. He goes into something. I forget what exactly it was, and I'll never forget this. He was looking at it, and then out of nowhere, he does one of these. And he looks at me. He goes, "Dude, today is your cutoff day."
What?
Today?
Today.
To that day?
That day.
Shut up.
That day. I swear. He
Wow.
looked at me, put his hands up. I was like, "Today's your cutoff day."
He's like, you got the
I'm
overtime.
like, "No way." He was like, "Yeah." He goes, "When do you want to do overtime?" "This week." He was like, "You want to do one full day of overtime?" I said, "No. I got 3 days off a week, Mike.
Yeah.
I work 4 days. I got 3 days off. I want to do all 3 days."
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he was like, "Oh man, you're gonna get burnt out." I was like, "I'm Brazilian, bro.
You're like, no.
I'm not getting burnt out."
No.
I was like, "Let me work 3 days." He goes, "Let's compromise. I'm gonna start you off with 2. I'm
Yeah.
gonna give you 2
You
days
need
of
one
overtime."
day off. Yeah.
Yeah, so you can have 1 day off. You
Yeah.
need to have that.
Yeah.
He goes, "Let's see how you do.
Yeah.
If you do well, if you're okay, the following week I'll give you another 2.
Cool.
And then you're doing well, you feel good.
Yeah.
If there's a week here and there, you want to do 3 days, I'll give you 3.
Cool.
I said, "No problem."
Cool.
That week I started doing overtime. Then he just kept giving me overtime, and I didn't mind work. It got to a point, I'll never forget this. It got to a point where my daughter's mother was just like, "Man, you're working so much. You know, it's like you need to spend some time home with us." And I looked at her, I was like, "You don't understand what I'm trying to do right now."
Yeah.
I was like, "Just let me do what I'm doing."
Yeah. Yeah.
So there was one point at Comcast where I did a month straight of overtime. I worked a whole month without taking a day off. I
Wow.
worked every day. Wow. And I was able to get myself out of that hole
Yeah.
and put a little bit of padding
Yeah.
in
That felt
you know,
good.
so I wouldn't fall back behind.
Yeah.
And but the second my schedule went back to normal, because they only let you do
Yeah.
overtime when, you know, if they're actually in need of it, but it gets to a point where they don't really need it anymore, so they cut you back. Then I started feeling like I was falling behind again, you know, and
And I think, you know, not to interrupt you, but
Yeah.
I think this like highlights something that Patrick and I talk about a lot, right? Where we talk about entrepreneurship and working for, you know, other companies and people, and it's very real that you can make a living working for someone else,
Yeah.
but you cannot get wealthy
Yeah.
working for someone else.
Yeah.
Right? You'll never really hit that point where it's like, oh my God, I just, had a life-changing month at work.
Yeah.
But you can have a life-changing real estate deal,
Oh my God.
right?
I bet you
Right?
Oh,
You
don't
can
I know
have,
this.
we just talked about this yesterday,
We did.
the deal you have going,
Yeah.
you can have, if you take that step and take that risk to work for yourself, you could, in one day, you could make like 5 1-year salaries, right?
Yes, you can.
And but where's the mindset shift, right? So
Yeah.
do you have anything you want to add onto that?
Well, no, first of all, so I'm processing what Yann just told us the past few minutes. And
Yeah.
I've known this brother for a few years. And we talk a lot, him and I. We talk about a lot of things. These stories that he just told us is blowing my mind, for one. And I didn't know this about this man.
Yeah.
I love him because he has a good soul. But now I'm starting to understand the deeper man that he is. And
Where
it
the
makes
drive
sense.
comes from, right?
Yeah,
Right?
because
You can
these are
start
the
to see.
things
Yeah.
that build when one has grit and determination and a purpose. Like he this is the reason why he is who he is now, because of the things he's endured and suffered and fought through. So I'm just so happy and proud of him. Like,
Thank you. I appreciate
I
that.
love you. I've said that
Same.
from day one. As a brother,
Same.
he's
I
my
love you
brother.
guys.
And we genuinely love you. I mean, we're friends first and foremost. before this
The feeling is mutual.
podcast.
Very
brother.
much.
So thank you so much for sharing. Like, this
course.
is incredible. It's incredible what you're sharing with us.
Listen, this is just who I am raw.
Yeah.
This is just raw who I am and what made me, the struggles, I don't look back at any of my struggles and say, I wish I didn't go through that.
Yeah.
I'm thankful for every single one of them.
Yeah.
I feel like in life, you either win or you learn. I don't feel like you lose. And
That's
I've
my
never
email
lost.
signature.
That's
That's
it.
on all my
It is,
emails
yeah.
that I send out. That is my tag.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Never lose. I either win or I learn.
I
We don't
love that.
lose.
That's
See? I
literally
didn't
my
know
email
that.
tag.
So
Yeah.
and that's what I live by. So every day I pray, right?
Yeah.
And every day, and one thing I love saying to God is, thank you for all the wins and thank you for all the lessons, because
Yeah.
under your guidance and under your love, I have yet to lose.
Yeah.
That's right.
You
Yeah.
know,
That's
so
right.
I've never felt like I've lost in my life.
Yeah.
I've always learned something.
So yeah, that was like so incredible, that story. I mean, I see good things happen to good people, so I could see how that happened to you. Is there like anything else you want to share, or
Going back to that story what we were just talking about,
Yeah.
when I was working for Comcast and doing overtime and all that good stuff, I started to think like, man, what can I do to make sure that I don't fall into these hard times? Because it's not realistic that I work overtime the rest of my life,
30
And
days
it's
straight, right?
30 days straight. And
Yeah.
It's going to take a while till I get a significant raise.
yeah,
So I thought to myself, I'm going to go back to my old roots while still working this job and start, I'm going to try to start a business, because I've worked for somebody else before and I made them a lot of money.
yeah,
Why can't I do this for myself,
Right.
So I started doing this thing where whenever I went to somebody's house when I was working for Comcast, I would kind of just throw a little punchline in there. I'm like, not too long ago, I was just working on a house right down the street from you. And if I saw that they needed a paint job at their house or something done, and they would ask, I was like, would they having the same problems? I was like, no, I own a small little business on the side. I paint houses. I do this, I do that, and the other. So that's just what I do to feed my family. On top of this,
Yeah.
And a lot of times people are like, oh, really? You do painting? You do that? I'm like, yeah, I do.
Yeah.
And as you can see, our house needs to be painted. Do you want to give me a quote? That would happen a lot.
yeah.
And I never forget, there was this lady, Janet, right? When I said that to her one time, she was like, oh my God, we've been looking for painters. And
Because
we're having such a
contractors are
hard
famous
time.
for not calling people back,
Right.
right?
And
And
she was having such a hard time.
and here you
finding
were in her
anybody.
living room.
Yeah,
Yeah.
literally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she was like, well, as you can see, my house hasn't been painted in 15, 20 years. She was like, would you want to give me a quote? And I said, absolutely. I gave her a quote. She said my husband will be back from work by the end of the week, because he traveled a lot for work. He was a president of a company. And then she called me back. I was super hopeful that she'd call me back. I gave him a quote.
Yeah.
They accepted it. I did a contract. So what I did was I worked every day at Comcast from 7 to 6. but summertime we got the sunlight to 8:39.
Yeah.
I was going straight over there and working, right, and just working at a house so the sun went down.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then on my days off, I'd show up at 6:30 and work all the way again to the sun went down. Then I got a couple guys to help me. We finished the whole house. The house looked absolutely amazing. They loved it. There was a ton of rotted wood that needed to be replaced, a ton of extra work that we found along the way. They were happy to pay for it all. They couldn't be happy with the work. So they paid me. I got paid. I got my first big check.
Yeah.
Do you know what the first thing was that I bought with that money when I cashed that check?
What is it?
I bought my daughter that dog.
Oh my God.
The dog.
The dog.
Oh my
That dog.
God.
I immediately, the first thing I did, I grabbed her. I came
dog.
home happy as hell.
Oh
I
my
came
God.
home. I grabbed my daughter. We went to Walmart and I took her right to that dog and I bought her that dog.
Oh my God.
It's gonna make me
I'll
cry,
never forget.
man. This is crazy.
I almost cry every time I tell the story because
Tears on the mutiny model.
I can never forget the feeling, you know. But that was
Yeah.
the first thing I
Yeah.
bought was the doll.
Yeah.
You know, and then I took her mother. I said, you know, let's go do some shopping. Let's buy some stuff.
And
for
you
the
must have
house.
known, like, now I know I can make money for myself. I don't have to be working for someone else.
Right.
Now here's the blueprint. Let me scale this.
At
Right?
that moment, I knew, you know, and I said, you know, I'm willing to work hard. And if I'm
Yeah.
willing to work this hard for somebody else, I'm willing to work this hard for me too.
Did you have the name
And
at that point?
At that point, I did not have a name yet. It was
What,
just
you
Yann.
love his
Yeah,
name. You
so-
love the
Yann.
name.
So,
You know?
so I know where this is leading to. So I can see this is the beginnings of Pro Warrior everything. Because Yann has Pro Warrior. Can you please tell us, everyone, where's the name from? Where you got the name from? Because I'm sure there's a story behind that too.
There is.
Everything is a story. There's a story.
There is.
Yeah.
There is a story behind it. So at that point, right? I don't know. So I'm a Republican, loud and clear.
We are.
You know,
Yep,
all here.
same.
don't care who feels what about it. You know?
Yep.
Hate it or love it.
That's right.
You know, this
That's-
is me.
Oh, yes.
And and at that point, that's when Donald Trump was becoming president, right?
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
And I remember how there was a point where the whole kneeling to the flag became a huge thing.
Oh, yeah.
You
Oh
know,
my God.
and I am looking at. Am I allowed to say anything here?
You can say anything, and
Yeah,
we're
yeah.
not live, so go say whatever
And
you
I
want to
am
say.
looking at all these ungrateful idiots
Yep.
who were born in a first world country, the beautiful country of USA, kneeling for the flag for the simple fact that they didn't like who was becoming president. Right?
Exactly, yeah.
And I'm looking at these people and I'm like, y'all never lived a day in a third world country to see what it is like. You would appreciate having a warm shower. You would appreciate being able to go to the store and buying a bag of rice.
Yep.
These
Yep.
people don't understand.
They don't-
We don't have those privileges where we
Nope.
come from. You know,
And that's why
and-
he feels similar too. I mean, he was raised in Sierra Leone,
I
right?
share the sentiments. I grew
same.
up in my family's from Africa,
We
West
have these
Africa. I was
conversations
born
all the
here,
time.
but like Yann, you saying these things. You're sending the message. My example is people complain about having not enough sugar in their coffee.
Right.
That's
Right.
another good one.
Right.
To me, I cringe. I
Right.
can hear that from a mile away. I'm
Yeah.
like, if they only knew. If they only knew.
If
People
they
just want
only
clean
knew.
water. Forget the coffee.
Oh
They
my
just want clean
God.
water to
Just
drink.
clean water.
Just to hydrate.
You know?
So and then the kneeling thing. I'm a military man, so you already know the respect for the flag and country.
Yeah.
It's just like as high as any patriot could be, right? So
Right.
there are so many things we could talk about. But yeah, finish your thoughts. But I can understand every word you're saying.
That bothered me. That bothered me a lot because here I am, extremely grateful to have the opportunity to just walk in this land. I'm grateful to just walk here and to have a job here. And these people are protesting what?
Yeah.
What are you mad about? Look at the life you have, right? And I remember there was a point where people were being disrespectful towards soldiers,
Ah.
towards our American warriors.
Yep.
And to
Yep.
me, I always looked at it like, guys, these are the guys that keep us safe. These are the guys that makes it so we can live the way we do.
Yeah.
And here you are disrespecting the people that fight for you. Have you lost your mind?
Yeah.
You know, and I've always been a massive military guy. I respect our military more than anything.
Thank
I
you for
love
your
our
service.
soldiers.
Oh, my
Yes,
pleasure.
thank you for your
my
service.
pleasure. I
You know,
did it. I
Got a
my
Marine
pleasure.
here in
But-
the flesh.
I know, and then, you know, and I love our military, and I grew up. I was raised this way,
Yeah.
you know, to respect people, respect everybody, and respect our warriors, respect our flag, you know, respect our veterans, our
Amen.
military, You know, and to me, that I couldn't understand it. I was so mad, you know, through that
It
whole
was
thing.
mind-boggling at
And,
one point. It was
yeah,
like, what is
there was a point where I couldn't
you
even
know?
watch the NFL anymore, and I'm a huge football fan.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
couldn't even watch it
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah,
you
I
know,
agree.
that was pissing me off in a sense.
People
I can't
are up,
explain.
people are down. You're like,
Oh, yeah.
what's going on here?
There's
What-
people and I'm just looking at it. I was, you guys have no idea how ungrateful you are.
Yeah.
You have
Right.
no idea what you're doing right now.
Right.
You're
Yeah.
just little. You look like a sheep. You're just following a bigger sheep.
Yeah.
And you're looking like a sheep yourself.
Yeah.
Just because somebody thought it was cool to do it, so you're doing it now. So I got to throw something out there. Fuck Kaepernick.
Yeah.
I feel like he was one of the main guys that
Man
started
said
this
it.
bullshit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I just had to throw that out there.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so the name Pro Warrior was to express how I am pro military. I am
Okay.
pro the people that fight for us and keep us safe.
Okay.
Yeah.
The Pro Warrior name is a tribute to our veterans,
And we
to our
see
active
you.
duty.
We
you
see
know?
you supporting
So,
veterans. You're always doing free work for veterans on their home.
right.
Yeah. I
We
was
see
gonna
you
mention
giving
that.
that military discount to all veterans. So I can't say enough about that. We
Very important to me.
respect you so much for that.
Thank you. I
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Yeah.
It's
And it-
very important to me to give back, you know.
Yeah.
I got to look how much I've been given.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who am I to not give back?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I didn't know that was the reasoning for the name of the company, and that makes a lot of sense now.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense.
And that's why all
awesome.
our uniforms, there's an American flag on it.
I do. Your
You know?
trucks,
And-
all
Yeah.
your trucks.
And
I
I've
see
caught
them.
backlash from people before, like, "Oh, but you're Brazilian. Why you not? Why you not sporting a Brazilian flag?" I was like, "Since when do I run my business in Brazil?
Yeah.
Since when do I live in Brazil? Last time I checked, I have a New Hampshire zip code.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Last time I checked, I have
American.
American citizenship.
You're
Live free or
American.
die.
So yeah, you know what I mean.
Sure.
So yeah, I'm representing the country that
Yes.
allows me to live the life I have today.
That's right.
Not the country
Hell yeah.
I came from.
Yeah.
No disrespect to Brazil. I still
Yeah.
love Brazil. I'm
Yeah.
a Brazilian at heart.
Yes.
You know, but I'm American by choice.
There you go.
You know,
That's right.
and I represent the country that takes care of me.
That's
I
right.
represent the people that keep me safe, that allows me to have the life I live.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, so that's why you will always see an American flag on my company shirt. This is why you'll always see us doing free work
Yeah.
for veterans.
Yep. Yep.
You know, this is very important to me.
Still got the beanie you gave me with the American hat and the Pro Warrior. I
I
rock
love
it every
that.
winter. It's my
I
favorite
love
hat.
that.
And I have had that
Even
for
my
years.
beanies,
Yes.
I make sure we have an American
Yeah.
I
flag
know.
on it.
You
I
can
have
go on
it.
there.
I
So-
have the beanie.
Yeah, it's very important to me. You
That's
know,
incredible.
this country means a lot to me, and our veterans mean a lot to me, and not just veterans, but our military. Period, active
Yeah.
duty veterans.
Yeah.
Y'all mean a lot to me. You
Oh,
know? So
man.
it's just my way to give back.
And you
So-
do a lot, Yann. You do a lot. Thank you very much for everything you do. Because I
pleasure.
do keep I do watch your posts, and I know you made a post the other day where you were helping a veteran that couldn't afford to fix something on their house.
Yep.
And every time you make these videos, I don't care what I'm doing. I'll share it right away
Yeah.
because that's how we get the outreach. But I'm also trying to promote you for doing that kind of work. You know,
Yep.
there's so much nonsense on social media. However,
There really is.
Let's share the good stuff, right?
Yeah, the good stuff.
Spread
let's do this
something good.
positive
I
story.
gravitate to the
Yeah.
good.
Yeah,
And you're
let's
doing a
let's
lot
do
of
good for others.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Speaking of doing well and doing things for other people, did you know my friends and I started a foundation recently?
I did not know that.
You didn't?
Tell me about it. I
Oh
wanna
my
know more.
God. Yeah, so we started it last year, but we really kicked it off 1/1 of this year. It's called the
Yeah.
Rising Rose Foundation.
Okay.
And we are just supporting families in need in our immediate area in the Rockingham County. You know, we all were people that we were, you know, involved in philanthropy, but really wanted to see exactly where our money was going, you know, and so we were like, let's start something. So it's been really cool. We have 4 initiatives that we do where health, home, harvest, and holiday. So we do holidays for families who can't provide them on their own. We help people with the health initiative, getting to doctor's appointments and things like that. Home, doing home renovations for people who are having safety issues. And the harvest is a hunger initiative. So it's been really
That's
cool.
awesome.
Yeah, we have our first big event this weekend. We're doing like a wellness day, and it's just a fundraiser where, you know, come do some yoga, go through some workshops, and all the money that we make is going right back to the Rising Rose Foundation.
That's
so.
awesome. I
Yeah.
love it. Good for
Yes,
you.
Yeah.
It's an incredible group of women.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
I've seen you grow. I've seen the foundation
Quite
grow.
the gals.
Yeah.
Oh my
Fun
God, the
group.
Zoom meetings you wouldn't believe. There's 25 of us.
Wow.
Yeah, we started with where there was 4 of us. Then we had 7 members, and then we had a Galentine's event, and all of these women joined, and
That's incredible.
Yeah,
It is.
yeah.
It
Oh
is.
my God.
25 incredible women.
And they all,
Yep.
they
Just,
all pull their weight.
You know, using their time, you know, and it's like, who has extra time? No one.
Yeah.
We're all so busy. So it's cool. We're really grateful. And,
That's awesome.
And looking to make it big. So watch out for the gala. The gala at the end of the year.
Really?
You don't want to miss that.
All right. I'm in.
You
Say
don't want to
less.
miss that. But we want to pivot now. I want to talk about, what are these sexy belts behind me? What's going on here? How did you know, you're a dad, you're a business owner, and you said, I still want more. I still want to follow my passion. This is my passion. And not only did you follow it, you've conquered, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So bring us there. Tell us how that came about.
Yeah, so I started fighting a long time ago.
Yeah.
You know, I had 3 fights, and then I took a massive break when my daughter was born, my 9-year-old. I took, it was, you know, about a 9-year break at that point. You know, I had my last fight. My last fight was on the day of my birthday, was December 13th in 2014, I think it was.
Okay.
That was my last fight. I fought this guy, Franklin Isabel.
Okay.
I had a 13-second knockout. I knocked him out on December 13th. I knocked him out in
13
13 seconds. You know?
Nice.
In true champ form.
And I'm pretty sure this was on a Friday night, too. You
Oh,
know?
man, Friday the
I think
13th.
it was.
Friday the 13th.
I think it was on a Friday night, if
So
I'm
it's
not
lucky
mistaken.
for you, not
Yeah.
for everyone
Most of
else.
your fights are on Fridays. I've been to a fight or two of yours, and
Yeah.
they are on Fridays.
Yeah,
So it
yeah,
must have been.
They are. So, you know, then I took a huge break because I wanted to spend more time at home with my family and
Gotcha.
with my daughter, see them. I was leaving for work super early in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning. Come back home from work. Then immediately go to training. By the time I got back home from training, it was 9 o'clock at night, and I remember my daughter's mother was like, "Hey, I am tired.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like, I'd love for you to spend some time at home." So
Yeah.
I did that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did that. I said, you know what? Fighting's not really paying the bills at this point. It's more of a hobby.
Yeah.
It is a dream of mine to fight. And but you know what's really paying the bills is work right now. Barely paying the
Yeah.
bills at that point. You know, because at that point when that happened, I was still working for Comcast, not able to do overtime.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
so it was you know, I took a huge break, and then in 2023. You know, one of my teammates called me in and said, "Hey, I have a fight. Can you help me? You know, can you come and help me get ready?" You know, and I was like, "Bro, I haven't fought in so long." I was like, "I'm out of shape, dude." You know. I was
And
like,
were you
"Ah."
mainly doing like just all like MMA, or were you Muay Thai or more jiu-jitsu? Or
MMA,
what were you?
just
okay.
everything.
Just everything.
Yeah.
Cool.
And he's like, "Nah, bro." He's like, "You're good, man. You're good. It would be helpful to have your brains in there, and you know, would love to have you come in and just help me." So I came in for practice one day, and I'm training my very first day back into training to help these guys get ready for their fight. These are guys that are training every day, and I'm literally just picking them apart.
Wow.
You know,
Yeah.
it was one of those things. I just never lost it. You know, I took a time
Yeah.
off, but I stayed fresh. You know?
Yeah.
And I remember my coach was just like, "Dude, why don't you come back to training and fighting?" He was like, "These guys are training every day. See what you just did to them?"
Yeah.
You know, it was like,
Yeah.
dude, I was like, I know you're out of shape, but like, you just picked these guys apart.
But what
just
if you
did
were in
whatever
shape?
wanted.
Yeah,
Right?
imagine.
It's like, imagine if you were training every day. It was like, come back and fight. Do one more fight.
Yeah.
You know, and I was just like, you know what? I'm going to do it. You know,
Yeah.
I was like, it'll get me back in shape too, you know, so let's do it.
Okay.
So I took one fight against this behemoth of a man. The guy was like 6 foot something, big dude, in a weight class I've never fought before. It was a much higher weight class.
Yeah.
And I beat him. You know,
Yeah.
I beat him. I choked him out very quickly within like a minute and something.
I
of the
watched that
first
fight.
round.
I was
Yeah.
there.
Yeah,
I was there.
you were-
I brought
Yeah.
front row seats.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
yeah,
I
you
was
were
there to witness
Yep.
this.
You
True
know?
story. This happened, people.
That was a
He did
big
it.
dude.
Yeah, it was.
That was a big
Oh my
dude.
God, incredible.
Yeah.
It was David and Goliath.
Yeah.
He took down Goliath. I saw. I was
Literally.
there.
He came at me hard. I got underneath him, picked him up over my hand, threw
Yes.
him down, and just
It was
beat him.
quick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another quick one.
Then I just kept going. I said, I'm going to take another fight. And I fought Derek the Freitas, and, you know, and so it went on, you know. So then I fought for the welterweight title. I became the Combat FC back in February 9th of last year. I became
Congrats.
the Combat FC welterweight champion.
Yep.
Congrats.
You know, and then I was just like, you know what? What if I move up and fight for the middleweight title? You know, I want to crack at it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And I got paired up with this beast of a man, Chris Foster. This guy is a beast. He was coming off 2 wins in Bellator.
Oh.
He fought in PFL.
Okay.
Guy is big, strong dude.
Yeah.
You know, and I took him on for the middleweight title.
Okay.
And I won that, knocked him out in less than 2 minutes of the first round. So that was September. I think it might have been September 13th of last year.
Okay.
And I became the Combat FC welterweight and middleweight champion. So now I
these
have
are,
2
these
belts.
are representing 2 weights.
Two
weight classes.
2 weight classes. So that represents 2 different title fights. One for the welterweight and one for the middleweight title.
Jesus.
Wow.
You know, so I am currently right now the Combat FC welterweight and middleweight champion of the world.
Oh, man.
So,
Who wants
Oh,
it?
my
Who
God.
wants it? Come for
you want to come get it, you know?
get
If you got a good record, you know, like I've been offered some goofy fights lately against guys who are coming off losses, and of course those guys that are coming off losses, they don't mind fighting me because they got nothing to lose.
They
If
got
they
nothing
beat
to
me,
lose.
they're rock stars.
Yeah.
If they lose, they're supposed to lose.
Yes.
You know, and unfortunately I've had to turn those fights down because they don't do anything for my career. You know,
Right.
it makes no sense.
Yeah.
You know, and it makes no sense for me to fight a guy who's only 3-0 or 4-0
Yeah.
when I'm 7-0.
You're
You know,
right.
I want a guy who's up there, who's had 8 fights, 9 fights, 10 fights, you know, who are on a hot winning streak. Those are the guys I want.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, you know, I'm supposed to fight June 13th.
Okay.
Unfortunately, we have
On the
not
13th
found,
again?
On the 13th
That's good.
again.
Is it a
That's
Friday?
good.
The 13th again. You know? So, unbelievable. So I'm supposed to fight June 13th.
Okay.
For some reason, I'm always fighting on the 13th. You know, I don't know if
But
it's
you're
good
winning.
luck.
You're
It's
winning.
good
It's
luck.
okay.
Because
It's
I'm
okay.
winning.
It's okay.
So it's good luck.
You're
you know?
winning. You're winning.
So I'm supposed to fight then, but so far we have not found the right opponent yet.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
coming off wins because, again, the only guys that have accepted a fight so far, they either, you know, they're coming off losses or they barely have a record.
Understood.
Which doesn't make sense
Yeah.
where I'm at in my career, you know?
Right.
So we'll see. If it doesn't work this time, I won't fight in June. We'll set it up for a different date when we find a worthy opponent.
Yeah.
But,
Okay.
you know, no matter what, I'm still the double champ. So
That's right.
somebody out there wants it, come get it.
Yeah.
You know, come get it.
You heard the champ. He said it.
You heard it
Whoever
here.
wants it,
Right
come
on the mutiny
You
model.
want to come get it. You know?
Incredible.
So Yann, you know, just to kind of wrap this up and bring this home, you're obviously you know you've succeeded in so many different areas, coming from humble beginnings. What would you say to that person that is going through that dark time right now? That is thinking, you know, maybe I do want to start my business, maybe I do want to follow my passion, but it just seems so, you know, it seems so hard. Other people make it seem easy because, you know, they see the success a lot of times and they don't see the struggle. What would you say to that person that's maybe watching right now?
What I'm going to say is if it scares you, do it. You know, nothing that's easy is worth having.
Yeah.
You know, so if people are telling you it's hard, believe them, it is hard. You know,
Yeah.
but if you don't mind hard work, if you don't mind putting the time in and you stay true to yourself, it's worth it. You know, it's not going to be easy.
Yeah.
You know, it's not going to be easy.
Yeah.
But it's worth it. You know, you can
And
either
it's
spend.
doable.
It is very doable.
And it's doable,
And
right?
if
It's not.
you have a good work ethic and you're willing to put the time and be honest with yourself,
Yeah.
you're gonna make it happen. You know, it's worth it.
Yeah.
You know, you can either spend the next 10 years of your life making somebody else rich and making money for them and building their business, or you can spend the next 10 years of your life building your business.
Yeah.
It might take you 10 years,
Yeah.
but what happens after the 10th year?
Where do you get? Yeah.
Or you live the rest of your life comfortably?
Yep.
Will you regret that you spent the last 10 years doing that? Will you be mad that it took you 10 years? If now it's working and you're living comfortable and you have achieved your dreams,
That's right.
the other 10 years don't matter.
Yep.
Whether it was easy or not.
When you said if it scares you, that resonates for me. I know that resonates for Patrick because we have check-ins with ourselves, with each other a lot, and he'll say, you know, should we do this or should we slow down or should we? And I tell him, I always want to be scared.
Yeah.
If I'm always scared, that means I'm growing,
That's right.
right?
Comfortability is the
it.
worst thing that
If
can
you're
happen.
comfortable and you know, just that healthy fear of like, what if this fails? What if this doesn't? You know, what if this happens? We just opened a podcast studio. This was just on a whim. I don't know. We didn't plan this. We were laughing about it the other day. We're like, we own a podcast studio, and we're like, yeah, we just.
Yeah.
We wanted to get our voice out there, and you know, why not have our own space? Why not? It wasn't planned, but we followed our intuition, right? We followed our heart. It was a little scary doing it, you know, just everything, but it worked out. We're sitting here with you. It's great energy. Thank you for being on the show. I can't wait to see it.
Cheers, brother. Let's say thank you so much for being here. Cheers, everybody.
Cheers, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.